At the end of your life, what will be your legacy? What will you leave behind for future generations? For the world, join the World Messenger, Izabela Lundberg, each week as she brings you a new distinguished guest from the business, sports, or entertainment world to share their success, their struggles, and their lessons. They will share their insights into current hot topics that affect everyone. Izabela facilitates an intimate, vulnerable environment to find the true value of humanity and real leadership. Are you ready for your legacy? The legacy that matters?
Hello, my beautiful friends. It's Izabela Lundberg here, the World Messenger, and I'm inviting you again for another episode of Legacy Leader Show. This morning, I have a very special guest. He is coming all the way from Toulouse, France, and his name is Bob Larcher. He is actually seasoned leadership development guru since 1986. That was the first time when he really deep dived into corporate training and leadership development. And as you guys know, I'm so passionate about it, and I cannot wait to deep dive with him about that. He's also a professional journalist and very, very accomplished in wide range of work, working with CEOs and large corporations. And obviously, with a great experience, obtained subject matter expertise in multiple disciplines related to leadership, which I will let Bob unpack. Good morning, Bob, or good afternoon. How are you?
Good morning or good afternoon from Toulouse. It's just after 4:30 in Toulouse. Very pleased to be here. I don't consider myself to be a guru. I'm clearly someone who, I've been involved in leadership for over 35 years. My first official training was in September 1986. So that's kind of an anniversary for me. But I was unofficially doing leadership and personal development for a couple of years before that. So it's something I'm still passionate about 35 years later.
Wow. So I guess that's once you started, you never stopped. That's fantastic.
No plans to retire. Well, I will retire one day, but I love what I do.
That is beautiful. That is great to hear. Do you
more
mind
about what I? Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, I'll say it's more about it's more a passion than I make money out of it, but money is certainly not the driver.
That's great, and they usually say, and it's always true, when you lead with the passion, everything else follows, right? So you find the right audience and right clients and people to serve. But if you don't mind telling us, how did you start it? I mean, even concepts of leadership in early 80s, they're not as clear, obviously, as they're today. Do you mind just telling me some of those early pioneering times, and how did you break into that?
Pioneering times. I'm actually a chemical engineer by training.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied. I have an engineering diploma, chemical engineering diploma, and I was a chemical engineer. And when I was 28, I discovered the world of personal development. I participated in a kind of a program as an observer. It was a program in the outdoors for young offenders. I wasn't a young offender. I was older than the young offenders, but people knew I had a kind of an interest in young people, and I did this two-week program. We went off to Wales in the UK. It was Christmas time, and it was snow on the ground, and we were camping out overnight. And that was a real turning point in my life. We had, or the trainers had about 12 young offenders, and on day one, they were kind of, to be polite in the UK, we say effing and blinding, and it was really, really difficult. And at the end of the 2 weeks, they'd gone through a behavioural change, which just amazed me. And I kind of said overnight, that's what I want to do. I want to help young people do that. Because I was actually born in the East End of London, so I kind of came from a fairly difficult part of London. I left school at 16. I was kind of forced to go to work to help the family income, but thanks to some good managers and maybe a bit of personal ambition, some 10 years later, I had a diploma in chemical engineering, etc., etc. So I was kind of working with people who were a bit like me, who hadn't managed to get out, and I thought, well, if I can get out, anyone can get out. So that was kind of my, that was a real turning point.
Sounds like you did a lot of things and not necessarily in the right, I mean, in the order that typically everybody were doing, but that is fantastic. Great accomplishments during challenging times.
Oh no, I was in, I said I was born in the East End of London. I went to what we call in those days a factory fodder school. So you was expected to go to school, come out and go to work for Ford or whatever. I grew up in the 60s, Vietnam War, hippies, the Beatles, etc. I was kind of a bit apart. I had kind of a different vision of what life was about. I didn't want to go into a factory, and I managed to. I mean, if someone had told me when I was maybe 17 or 18 that I would one day be an international leadership development consultant, living in France, working bilingually in English and French with company presidents, I would have probably gone and found a gun to shoot them and put them out of their misery.
But that is amazing because everybody have a very different beginnings, right? And what we learn from those challenges in early years and early stages of our lives. And I love what you just mentioned, how it was important to have some really good managers and good leaders within an organization you were starting with through that engineering pathway, and then how you end up here. I also love that you shared a little bit about working with a youth. For me, seeing a lot of that need, obviously across the world, but also being here in the United States, so I can kind of absolutely relate to that. So, and then from there, you obviously build up further. And how did you truly start developing the first courses on leadership and recognizing the need?
I started, so I did this course as a participant. So I decided I wanted to work with young people. So I spent a few years, and I was particularly interested in working with people in the outdoors, using the outdoor environment as a means for personal development. So I became a kind of an outdoor pursuits instructor. So I could take people off into mountains and down rivers. I then became a centre manager. So I actually managed a residential centre for young people. And then I decided I wanted to become a bit more professional in what I was doing. And I was recruited by a company in the UK, which was called Development Training Limited, who are doing what I was doing with young people, but they were working in corporate organisations. So they were developing apprentices, they were developing supervisors, they were developing managers, they were developing senior managers. So I joined them in their young people's division, working with young people within a corporate environment. And very quickly, I worked with the managers of the young people, the managers of the managers of the young people, and so it went up. Quite, I mean, it was in the mid 80s. It was all quite intuitive in those days. Yeah? There was theory around, and I'm interested in theory. So I was actually the person in the company who started diving into the theory and started reading stuff by Percy and Blanchard, by the various leadership gurus of the epoch, and started bringing some kind of leadership models into the work we were doing. And as I discovered, I found it more and more fascinating.
Yeah. I bet. And reason why I'm asking those early pioneering years, of course, leadership existed for hundreds of years as a concept, but developed as we developed, as industries developed, as companies, countries, and as human evolution continued to be more and more demanding specific types of behavioral characteristics. And you mentioned those, that how important it is to really recognize what behavior certain people are exhibiting and how they can shift it and change them. And obviously, tools and methodologies are the key to help us. But as you said, I love the concept of nature, healing, and being outside, because that really helps us to really be more in touch with ourselves and recognize and build that self-awareness that is so important, that I feel like a lot of leaders are actually lacking today. So do you mind sharing some of the tools and methodologies that you find extremely useful with all of these complexities that we're having today?
Maybe just with regards to the outdoors, I think the outdoors is an environment which it strips people down.
Yes.
You take off your tie, you take off your suit, you're faced with challenges where you're no longer the expert. Yeah, you're no longer the official leader.
You don't have a
know what's going
title.
on.
You don't have a title, just
No.
you.
I mean,
Yeah.
and what I say, and I'm particularly interested in leadership,
Mm-hmm.
maybe less in leaders, but
Mm-hmm.
in more in leadership, and how each person can incarnate their leadership capacity. So how each person can incarnate their ability to influence other people in a given situation, to go in a particular direction, to act in a particular way. So my personal belief is that we all have one leadership tool. You know,
Yes.
I think it's really the only real tool we have, and that's ourselves.
I 100% agree with that. Absolutely.
It's a tool. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife tool. You can do a lot with it. You can motivate people with it. You can excite people with it. You can encourage people with it. You can demotivate people with it. You can, excuse my language, piss people off with it, put people out, etc. So you can really do a lot with this tool. Then my line has always been like any tool. Yeah, you have to look after it. If you don't oil it regularly, if you don't use it regularly, it'll go rusty and you won't be able to use it. So for me, it's about understanding you and how you use yourself to encourage, to motivate. So it's about how you hold yourself. It's about your posture. It's about what you say. It's about how you say it. It's about your empathy. So there's a lot of maybe personality from the inside and a lot of behavior from the outside. So I'm not really a techniques and methods person. Like we need techniques. We need to be able to maybe set objectives. We need to know how to manage conflicts. Do I go into competition? Do I go into accommodating mode? But my line has always been really about helping people to more fully incarnate their leadership potential. I have an approach which I call my D to the power of 4 approach. So for me, it's about discovering your leadership potential, developing your leadership potential, deploying your leadership potential in order to be able to drive some kind of transformation, personal transformation, organizational transformation, societal transformation.
Brilliant, brilliant. And what I love about what you just shared, you going more with the deep within, because everything starts with us individually. And I love that you emphasize on that. And a lot of times, specifically in our culture, I don't know how it's in Europe these days, but in US, it's all about the speed and rapid thing and quick fixes and change. But I always say transformation takes time, takes effort, takes diligent work, as you just said, takes some maintenance. And as a result, yes, it's exponential return on investment, but you have to put investment in. And a lot of times I see this sense of urgency, but then also lack of patience and not willingness to really put a effort that is required, that is needed, and specific with organizations these days. So transformation.
I often use the analogy of becoming a great guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you want to become a great guitarist, you need to practice your scales, you need to practice your modes, you need to practice your positions, you need to play on an electric guitar, you need to play on a flamingo guitar, etc., etc. And becoming a great leader or being able to incarnate your leadership, it's the same thing. It's a conscious, long-term effort. It doesn't happen like that.
Absolutely. But I'm beside that, I study obviously leadership, and I always was passionate about it, and I always was reading books from very, very early age and reading different, not only concepts and techniques and strategies and whatnot, but also stories and how powerful and impactful the stories when you can see what is truly possible. And sometimes people need that evidence, right? Oh my God, if he can do it, then I can do it. Because a lot of times as humans, human nature is, we either set too low expectations of ourselves, or we believe that we are not capable of accomplishing. Like, for example, like you were just mentioning, you just spoke in French to 100 plus people, but then you juggle English and French. And so many people say, I can learn another language, let alone I cannot really lead 100 people. So why do you think leadership as a concept and as a leadership in sense of being is so important as we evolve and as we rapidly grow and evolve, not only technologically, but within current environments that we're facing? Because I really feel like it's two different ways of how people perceive leadership today. So I would love to hear your perspective. What do you see is shifting and in a way kind of forcing for that to happen?
I think what you just said, being, for me, is an extremely important word. I wouldn't say that for me leadership is not about doing things, but it's clearly about being. I think there's a certain notion of verticalization, becoming who you are. So it's about who you are. It's about your ability to incarnate everything you have. So I think clearly being leadership. It's more being leadership than doing leadership. So a trend that I see today, which is, I think, something that I find quite disturbing, is that leadership seems to be becoming, certainly in the political world, maybe in other worlds, all about criticizing people, belittling people, putting people down, saying they don't know what they're talking about because they're black, they're green, they're grey, or whatever. And the notion of kind of the nobleness of leadership. I don't criticise the person, but I criticise their ideas. I argue against their ideas. I don't argue against them. And I think there's maybe I won't name names, but there's a lot of very senior political people today who their rhetoric is all about, oh, this person is stupid, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, this person is that. And I think it's people who are kind of at role model level. Yeah, these are kind of the people that the younger people would look up to and say, oh, this is the president, this is a prime minister, this is a president, this is what we should be aspiring to. We should be aspiring.
CEO of the company or people that are leading large enterprises. I totally see that, and it's excellent point. But this is what I wanted to kind of dispel the myth. And I think this is unfortunate that we're using leadership roles or leadership status. Just somebody because of their roles in the company, they're called leaders, but they may not have a leadership quality, and they're not necessarily leaders based on concepts, what constitutes for someone to be the leader. As a result, because just title and position, people look up to them, but they don't necessarily exude the leadership traits. And it's exactly what you just said. And as a result, confuses people and gives them the pass and makes things easier. So not to work on yourself, not to be self-aware, not to pay attention to your language and your behavioral stuff and how that makes impact, obviously, very, very negatively on the others. And I think that is the conflict that I see just about use of the verbiage.
Oh, for sure. I think leadership is often used. It's incorrectly used. There are people who are, as you say, there are people who they are clearly in a leader position. There are people who are at, I say people in a leader position. There's people who are kind of senior levels of an organisation. Once you become a vice president, senior vice president, they're the sorts of people in organisations who we would expect to have a kind of a leader role. And lots of times these people, they don't incarnate leadership. As you say, they have the etiquette. It says leader, but in terms of what they do, that they aren't incarnating what I understand leadership to be all about. Leadership is about influence people. It's about inspiring people. It's about encouraging people, etc. And I think, the word leadership has often, I feel, been maybe usurped by the business world.
Yes.
And actually, a leader is you're a very senior manager. And I think I work with a lot of organisations where they have people who have become very senior managers, and they have this. They're expected to have a kind of a leader role, but they don't. And often what I do and people I work with do, we try to help these people to better incarnate their leadership capacity. And in France, it's maybe a little more difficult, because in France, maybe the watchword within management in France is power. In France, it's all about acquiring power. I think in an American culture, in an Anglo-Saxon culture, it's more about acquiring influence. Yeah, I think if as an American or a British person, we can no longer influence things, then we kind of feel a bit lost. In the French culture, if you don't have power over things, you're a bit lost. So in the French culture, people, they do school, they do business school, they move up the organization, and they acquire more and more power. And when I talk to them and I say, well, in fact, now the position you're at, it's actually about letting go of the power. It's about empowering other people, and your role is somewhere else. And these people say, well, yeah, but Bob, I've spent all my life acquiring power, and now you're asking me to give it away? Intellectually, I understand. Emotionally, wow, it's not easy.
Yes, and specifically allowing and trusting other people to do their job. And I love the contrast you just pointed out, but I have to say things shifted in the United States and in the recent few years, and definitely this 2020, I see more and more shift actually towards the power, just in the verbiage. And obviously as a journalist, I'm sure you appreciate this. When you look at the titles, when you look at conversations, when you look at the tweets, when you look at the quick snippets and conversations that are coming through, it's a lot about that power and almost like essence of this way or highway or this is the law, and it's just a set, and it's very could be very, very frightening actually, and very intimidating, because a lot of times it's not even question, is it factual, is it real, but it's just the sense of I can position however I want, and I can just keep going and keep doing what I'm doing without worry about it, how others will take it, because I come from place of power. And I pay a lot of attention from those different titles and publications. And it's very, very interesting to see the shift that we're seeing right now.
Well, I think today we live in, a digital world.
Yes.
In the past, people talked about bite-sized pieces of information. It was bite with an I. Today it's bite-sized pieces of information, but the bites with a Y. Yeah. So I think what seems to be the key word today is reactivity. You have to be able to react. Someone makes a comment, you tweet, you do something. I think in the old days, maybe reflection was maybe a bit more respected. Someone says something, you take time to reflect on it, you take time to think about it, you say, oh no, in my opinion, and you have the time to build a considered opinion of something. Mm-hmm. Today, it's as you say, someone makes a statement, 2 seconds later on Twitter or on LinkedIn, someone's already made their comment. Mm-hmm. So there's clearly been a shift, I think, to more reactivity, more speed, more. It's kind of it's Andy Warhol's 15 minutes of fame. Everyone has to be out there giving it this, responding, etc. To the detriment of maybe people who take the time to think and construct a really solid argument. I mean, so if you listen to some of the arguments that some politicians put forward, you just think, I mean, I hear them think, it's not possible. Well, why doesn't somebody ask them the question? Why doesn't somebody just say to the politician, excuse me, how did you come to that conclusion? What did you take into account? What did you think about? Or what did you read? What did you hear? People just go, oh yeah, it's okay. No, it's not. I mean, that seems to, that dialogue seems to have disappeared.
You're totally right. And factual dialogue and conversation and leveraging facts and analytics and data that really does support, and not too frightening, not too scary, but to really create a point why we're making certain decisions, which directions we're going. And I really see that a lot of also organizations and even CEOs right now, with the shifts and changes that are happening in their organizations, if you do not present information to people in a way that they can really connect the dots, and they're done in a very caring, genuine way, people are left with so much questions, and and as a result, they're having so much fear because it's fear unknown. What else is going to happen? What is next coming? And then when you leave people hanging and lingering, and when their safety is jeopardized and longevity for their, loved ones, their family members, their jobs, and everything that comes with that. And then you even reflected, how you as a 16-year-old had to go financially help your family. I mean, what level of sacrifice they had to do in UK during, early 80s. It's a huge, like we see cyclical things happening historically right now with this pandemic and implications that are there. I really feel like more than ever, as you just pointed out, it's a need to have these conversations and hear a different point of view, like what's going on in France, what's going on in UK, what is your perspective on Europe, what are your suggestions, because that's the only way we can truly press and move forward, because we need to look at things holistically, don't we?
Oh yeah, I mean, I already my approach to leadership is a very, I like to think I have a very holistic approach. I mean, just going back to the dialogue. I mean, there's I don't know if the model is. There's a framework I work with, which is it's kind of a pyramid. You have dialogue, discussion, debate, and what's called, I think, diatribe. Yeah, the pinnacle is dialogue. Yeah, we exchange and we learn from each other and we ask questions. Discussion, there's maybe a bit of exchanging, but not so much learning. Debate is essentially about proving that I'm right and you're wrong. And diatribe is simply criticizing people. And today, a lot of the exchanges I see, even sometimes on systems like LinkedIn, the written exchanges, it's just diatribe. It's just calling people names, telling them you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I'm shocked at the level of professionalism on LinkedIn and on some of those posts. And I was like, what are you thinking? How do you present yourself, your brand, and who you are individually, and also your organization? And I was like, who else is reading, and is anybody taking action?
I mean, personally, I have no problem with people criticizing my ideas. I have no problem with someone saying to me, no, your vision of leadership, it's wrong, Bob. You've not thought. I'm quite happy to discuss at that level. But when people say to me, Bob, you don't know what you're talking about.
Understanding the meaning, disrespect.
Where does that come from? How do you know? Do you know me? I mean, that's even worse. People don't even know you. They'll say, you don't know what you're talking about. How do you know I don't know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I've studied? Do you know what I've done? How do you know I don't know what I'm talking about? I mean, when they say you don't know what you're talking about, I think what they're actually thinking is, I don't agree with you. But what comes out of their mouth is, you don't know what you're talking about. Sure. And I think it's become the norm. Yeah. The reaction to say, that's an interesting point of view. I don't see things exactly the same way as you. So how did you come to that conclusion? What have you read? And then you can exchange. And then you can, But when someone says to you, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, you have to be, okay.
I know, yeah. That is where it comes in, that level of maturity, self-awareness, and then emotional intelligence, to know emotionally how to approach it, how to not necessarily diffuse situation, but position with the right type of behavior to offer something that person can truly digest, knowing where they are, meeting them where they are, but also building that emotional capacity to extending yourself in space around you so that they can really see, hopefully, things from different perspective. And I honestly think more than anything, we need now these types of conversations and holding the space for others to really recognize it is the other way to be. It is actually possible to achieve and accomplish X, Y, and Z. And yes, I can contribute more and do things better in different ways. That also makes me much more happier and more relaxed and more satisfied and much more feeling accomplished versus all of the turmoil and all of this conflict-based responses, which are actually crisis-based. And we're definitely in the crisis mode, right? As a result, we get our crisis responses. but how to now step and how to manage the crisis, that is where actually leadership shine and leadership traits come to light that I really feel like they're truly, truly more than ever most important
Clearly,
right now.
I think in terms of, I don't know if it's emotional intelligence, but I think leadership, it's about, I think for me, I often use the analogy that there's two worlds. There's what goes on out there,
yes,
and there's what goes on in here. And I think when you're in a leadership position, you have to be. There's a posture where there's the appropriate distance. So there's what's going on out there, and you're not kind of submerged and drowned by the wave of what's going on out there. And at the same time, you're not so far away that you're completely distant to what's going on out there. But you're clearly aware of what's going on out there. People are dying, things are happening, etc. And that's making me feel bad. That's making me terrible. That's making me feel frightened, etc. But I get the right balance in terms of how should I behaving with regards to this. Yeah, I'm in a leadership position. I'm expected to be showing something. I'm expected to be inspiring people. Maybe I need to be empathetic with people. I need to be caring with people. Maybe I need to show urgency. Maybe I need to show conviviality. But I need to be aware of what's going on out there and what's going on in here. Yeah, there's a phrase I very much like by Viktor Frankl, which says something like, our last freedom as a human being is to decide how to behave in a given situation. So there's things that go on out there, and we can decide. Maybe it's not a conscious decision process, yeah, but I think the idea that we can decide how to behave in that situation.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is what I keep saying. More than ever, we need that self-awareness, and then know: are we part of the solution or we're part of the problem? Are we fanning the fires, or what are we exactly doing? Or we're putting out the fires? Because right now, a lot of people truly don't know, because they did not work so much on themselves. They did not invest to self-discover, or at least at this stage of life where they are, or they did not endure a lot of challenges and difficulty early on. And as a result, we see all kinds of behavior, just enough to go and drive to grocery stores sometimes, that you see things that you would not typically see, or the parking lot where the people are, trying to park and then, having an exchange with others, or just the lack of patience. Everything is so much easier, much more flammable, as I would say, because outbursts of rage and anger and frustration, it's just all that pent up, unresolved, and not really look deep within issues.
Which I find very strange. Because when I started back in '86, a lot of the work I and my colleagues were doing was about making people self-aware of their behaviour. So in '86, I worked a lot with transaction analysis. So I did a lot of stuff on helping people to understand their PAC profile. Am I more a caring parent, or I can't remember the name, the nurturing parent and critical parent? Well, I'm my natural child. And then from that, I moved on to Belbin, and then MBTI, insights, etc. So I think today, when I started, it was relatively new. The idea of doing a personality test was kind of, wow, what's all this about? Whereas today,
the fear, what they're going to find out, oh my God, and what they're going to do with that.
Exactly. Whereas today, they're all over the shop today. You can do online tests. So I think the notion of personal awareness is maybe much higher level than it was maybe in the 80s. And at the same time, people seem to be less personally aware. It's kind of a paradox. Yeah, there's more and more. Today there's courses and programs on being mindful, mental toughness, assertivity, and it's all about learning about yourself. But at the same time, you seem to see more and more people at quite senior positions, and I look and I say, wow, are you aware of how you're coming across? Are you doing this deliberately, or is it just you don't know? Yeah, and I think there are a lot of people, they are They are. I mean, I do a lot of work around mental toughness. Yeah, and mental toughness is all about being determined, taking on a difficult challenge, being confident in yourself, controlling things, etc. Yeah, it's a kind of a relatively positive thing to have. Yeah, but some people are kind of in the dark side of that. Yeah, they're stubborn, they're reckless, they're controlling, they're arrogant, and they seem to feel that they're incarnating the mental toughness. But in fact, what people are seeing in the outside is something completely different. We are seeing someone who's stubborn, who should be giving up and they're not, and they're taking all sorts of challenges, they're not giving anybody else opportunities, and it's this lack of self-awareness.
Very, very
Which
true.
I think for me, leadership and self-awareness, they go hand in hand. I think it was Kennedy now. Kennedy said, JFK, I think he said leadership and learning go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can learn always from one another, and it's always something that we can constantly learn. We're open to it, right? To learn from different perspective, and even just like this conversation, it's just great to hear from someone who is being practiced in leadership development since 1986. And beauty is right now, complex time call for much more. I wouldn't say complex solution, actually more simplified solutions, going back to basics. And a lot of times I see people looking things outside of themselves, like little gadgets, little tools that will help them. But reality is they're just there but they're not doing the work. You have to do your work. Tool will not do the work for you. So it's just very interesting. I was like, how do we become to be this quick fix fast and you know and do it as little as possible? I'm like, I don't understand it. So anyway, how is any of you in terms of professional development, personal development, and in terms of putting effort and energy in order truly to break through mental toughness, build the confidence, and really establish yourself? Because why is this important is because it's helping people to cope with issues that we're facing today. And who knows what we will be facing even next year, right? It's like, how can you do better if you're not working on yourself to be better?
Yeah, I think I've seen a trend. Mm-hmm. Which was certainly when I started in the 80s, it was I think the organisation I was in wasn't the only one. We were very people-centred. It was very much about understanding yourself, how do you function, understanding. I said we use that transactional analysis, understand yourself. And I think somehow I don't know if marketing played a role, but suddenly it became about techniques. And then we started seeing it become a mighty motivator, become a powerful presenter, become an inspirational influencer. And it was kind of learn a tool, learn a method. And I said, there's nothing wrong with learning a tool, but if you don't know how to use it yourself.
Yes.
I have tools. Yeah, I have a hammer, I have a saw, etc. But I'm not a DIY person. And you can give me all the tools you like, but I'm not a DIY person. Yeah. So I think, as I said earlier, the essential tool is oneself. I won't denigrate. I won't say you don't need techniques. Yes, we need to use techniques. We need to have some methods. But the essential is oneself. And the essential is your human dimensions, your intellectual dimension, your emotional dimension, your spiritual dimension, etc. Your roles as a leader, everything you have inside of you. And then, yes, we can't just be there and say, yeah, so here I am, I'm the leader, I'm being. Yes, we have to do things. And yes, we need some tools, we need some techniques and methods to do things. But if you're just applying tools, methods, and techniques, and you're not incarnating something behind that, then you're just going to build yourself a cupboard, which is like this.
Which is empty. What's in there?
It's empty, and it's the shelves are all at the wrong angles, etc. You're using the tool, but you're not.
And it's not sustainable, and that is what I'm trying to come across in my work. You have to put work specifically within an organization. So right now, we understand the challenges, we understand complexities, but again, effort and work, it's needed. Otherwise, quick new technology, new tools, new ideas, new assessment, all of those are great and they're telling, but if you're again not doing anything to make a change and to allow transformation, it's not worth it. It's like, so why we did all of this? And then a lot of times I'm hearing from people when they do a specific assessment, when they pour their heart out saying what they see it's not working and what they're hoping that should change. And then when they're being told, please share, we'll definitely make all the needed changes. And then truly after they do that, months pass by and nothing starts happening and people get shut down. And as a result, they're like, what's the point? And then I always say, you know, even if still things are not moving, you can continue moving within yourself and what you have control over. Because a lot of times we're also parked and waiting either on our partner or on our, you know, boss or whatever. But that is the beauty. You have the power and you should be feeling empowered to keep doing and progressing on your own, because sometimes that's only space you can do till situation and condition changes, new environment, new job, or whatever might be the scenario, new partner, new home, etc.
I think for me that's why I find leadership fascinating. Leadership is about you. It's you made me think when you just said I think it was Gandhi who said, "Be the change you want to see."
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think you don't have to be a manager, you don't have to be a supervisor, you don't have to be the leader, but we all have leadership. We can all do our bit to influence, to encourage, to motivate people to work towards a particular direction. And my belief has always been that probably what organisations need are less leaders and more leadership. Yeah, we probably need less people with the title leader. And we need organisations where people are empowered to be able to use their leadership, to incarnate their leadership, to encourage, to motivate, etc.
Brilliant.
So I think it's become something which has become very formalised. Certain people, certain levels, they're allowed to use their leadership or expected to use their leadership. And often at maybe the lower echelons of the organisation, no, it's not your role, that's not your job, etc. I mean, even today, I was in a conference not so long ago, and the presenter was talking about how organisations today, how organisations now, they're empowered, and we have these leaderless teams, etc. And I kind of went, this was pre-COVID, so I kind of went, excuse me, I work in a lot of organisations. It's not what I see. I still see a lot of command and control. I still see a lot of and a lot of people in the audience went, yes, so do I. So there's on one side kind of the theorists and the gurus, and you read articles in Harvard Business Review and McKinsey talking about empowered teams and so forth. But what you often see in industry is managers who are still it's kind of nice command and control. It's no longer the really authoritarian command and control, but it's kind of, you know, I'm asking you to do this, but I'm asking you to do it, yeah?
Absolutely. It's so true, because if we are in our different little bubble, in our world will look very different. But reality is obviously extending ourselves and knowing what is happening. That is why we need to have these dialogues and conversations, because even though perception around the globe, you right there middle of it, and you might have not only just a great insight, a great perspective, but as again, different trends and cycles and impacts and influence keep coming in the different parts of the world, help us to also prepare, help us to really see clearly. And with that in mind, with everything that is happening, obviously, with another major COVID coming cycle of the COVID coming, more organizations shutting down, more virtual work, more limitations of human conversation and touch, usually large Zoom calls, right? Where you really don't feel like you're just listening and you're being told, very little dialogue and really very little buildup of these types of relationship and rapport and getting to know each other, or really having the meaningful conversation. What do you see is happening right now? Where do you see some of the biggest opportunities, in addition, obviously, to the biggest needs?
certainly something I've been asked to work on, and I've actually run a number of Zoom webinars around the subject. It's the notion of incarnating your leadership screen to screen. Yeah, face to face. I'm in a room full of people. I give my ideas. People look at me and they seal my body language, my gestures, how I'm coherent, etc. And if you believe what communicators will tell us, 55% of our impact comes from our body language. Yeah, the fact that the gesture, the thumbs up, the look I give to somebody, that has a certain impact. That's disappeared. Yeah, when you're on a Zoom with one-to-one, I can see you're nodding your head, I can see you're looking, you're smiling. That I can pick up. When I'm on a Zoom with 10 people, wow! If they've got the cameras on, yeah, because often there's bandwidth problems, so no cameras. So people can no longer see me. They can't see my dynamism, my gestures. So it's really down to my voice.
Yes.
It's down to what I'm going to say. So maybe I need to be more concise. I need to be more precise. I need to be more clear when I'm speaking. And maybe I need somehow to use my voice to convey some of the things I would convey through my body language. Yeah, if I'm in a meeting and I want to get things moving, I think I'd probably stand up. I'd say, okay, we're going to do this. I'd stand up. I'd point. If I stand up on Zoom, I disappear. So I can't stand up. So what do? I have to somehow I change my voice. So if I want to convey maybe urgency, I need to use my voice in a particular way. If I want to convey maybe conviviality, maybe I'm going to use my voice in another way. If I want to convey empathy, maybe I'm going to maybe speak slower, have some pause. So what I'm doing with people now is looking at how can we use these new tools to have this leadership influence that I would have in the old world, but I don't have in a new world. Because today, already a lot of training is taking place via webinars. A lot of exchanges are taking place via webinars. And a lot of decisions are being made via webinars. So you imagine 10 people on a webinar having to decide. In fact, I started thinking about this during the lockdown in France, when I discovered that the French president, Emmanuel Macron, he would bring together his 20 experts once a week, and they would have a 2-hour Zoom to decide, do we lock down a particular city? And I was thinking, wow, these people, they've all got huge egos. They're all specialists in their domains. They're sitting in front of Zoom for 2 hours, and they're deciding whether we should be locked down or not. Wow, just how robust are their questions, are their decisions? I don't know if you know the film 12 Angry Men.
No, I did not hear about it.
Oh, you don't know 12 Angry Men? Well, publicity time, folks. If anyone's listening in, 12 Angry Men I've seen hundreds of times. It's an amazing film. It's a jury that have to decide whether a young boy is guilty or not. And you see egos, you see fights going on, and that exists in this world.
Absolutely.
You don't see it. You don't see it. Now, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? Screen to screen. So I think that in terms of leadership, getting the message across, understanding how people are feeling about things, inspiring people, encouraging people, screen to screen is an issue. I can't suddenly stand up and make an impassioned speech with all the body language, and people go, wow, yeah, this guy looks really, yeah, he believes what he's saying. They hear it, but they don't get the 55%, which is the congruency in how I am. We don't get that anymore, and that has a real. I mean, neurosciences will tell us that that part there, the emotional part of seeing the person, that helps us to anchor that information into our head somewhere, and that's no longer there. So we need to find another way of doing that. So for me, that's a key issue today for leadership teams. You can imagine we have a company where the CEO is in New York, the marketing director is in Hong Kong, the engineering director is in Mumbai, the sales director is in London. So we're on different time frames, the different nationalities, and they have to get together. Do we buy company A or do we buy company B? Some people don't care. They just want to go home. They're tired. They've got up early. Some people are convinced it's company A and I don't want to listen to any argument. And you have to decide, screen to screen. Whew, not easy.
You're so right. Not easy, because we also have so many other competing situations going on, right? And then working from home, and I'm seeing also a lot of children up from home now, also going to school, and changes completely family dynamics, but also changes working dynamics. And more than ever, we need to have a more tolerance. But everything you just mentioned. It's so easy to get away. It's so easy to not take a full responsibility and accountability because, again, am I performing the best I can? Am I showing up to support my colleagues? Did I do my research? Did I contribute valuable research or information that can help to really look at accurately not only risk assessment, but is this really good decision in the long run? Or we're just calling the favors to each other, or just trying to, as you said, get done with the deal and move on. I mean, it's just so many things, but when you think about it, a lot of those decisions will also impact us and how we're going to live and what's going to happen and what the next steps are going to be, because we live in a world right now where it just actually more and more restrictions imposed, right?
Yeah.
The question is, how do we behave? And I really find more than ever being in tune again with, as a behavioralist, with people's, as you said, not only nonverbal, but overall how they show up, because that tells so much where they are. And that tells also so much, what can we really do? Is it sometimes better to reschedule? Is it sometimes better to postpone decision? Is it sometimes better to actually have a smaller circle of people that are part of those dialogues and decisions? It's just so many questions, right? And so many scenarios here, but you are absolutely right when it comes to major, epic, life-changing, transforming decisions that impacts millions and billions of people, they'll require higher level of leadership. And as a result, obviously, it's ultimately what you will be known for, what will be your legacy. And if you don't mind, Bob, do you mind just sharing a little bit of, obviously you accomplished so much, and your passion is undying all these years, and it's just so exciting to see someone equally passionate as I am about the leadership. But in the same time, what is left in your bucket list? What would you like to still accomplish, and what would you like to be known for? Because obviously we do so many things because we love to do, but ultimately, did we make a difference? Did we impact positively, right?
Still to do. There's a lot of things on the to-do list. Places to visit, mountains to climb, rivers to canoe before I get too old. I think I like to think I'm a people developer. That's, I mean, if someone would describe me, I mean, yes, I do leadership development. I've helped people. I've done project management training. I'm also an amateur astronomer. I teach people astronomy.
Wow.
But really, I think if I had to be remembered for anything, it's a people developer. That's what I want to, I think, continue being. I mean, I think, as I said earlier, I discovered personal development, people development when I was quite young. And I think I realized that just what you can become. And I don't want to be boastful at all. But again, when I think back, yeah, I was born in the mid-50s into a reasonably poor family in the East End of London. I went to a school that got in the way of my education. I was supposed to go and work in a factory. I didn't. I became an engineer. I came to live in France. I was almost bankrupt at one point in time, but I stayed. So I think we all have it in us. Yeah. I think what I try to do is I help people to get in touch with what's in them. So if I have I don't know if it's a legacy, but it's a belief in people development. For some people, it happens. I think there are some people, things go right in their life and it happens. And some people, they need a kind of a leg up. So I think if I have to be remembered for something, it's being, I like people say, oh yeah, Bob was a good people developer.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And obviously, as you mentioned, on a little bit things on your bucket list, you have a lot of mountains to climb and a lot of places to go. Any specific adventure that you're eager to accomplish? I know we're having restrictions, but you have a beautiful coastline down in France, and you have a gorgeous mountains and areas.
Yep. So there's some lone voyages I like to do. I train to be how do you say that in a snow ski mountain leader some years ago. I didn't finish my qualifications because my son was born, but I still have the idea of doing a long snowshoe journey. And also, I mean, on maybe the more professional front, it's I became a freelance journalist earlier this year. I've been writing articles for quite a long time, and then I was approached, and I agree. So there's some stuff I want to do. I mean, at the moment I'm interviewing people, but there's some kind of. I mean, I've actually got a badge. I'm really proud. Yeah, tells me my rights as a journalist. And I can go into it. So no, I'm pressed. Let me pass. I'm really proud of that. And so I have. Maybe my bucket list is some investigative journalism. So there's some subjects with regards to leadership, with regards to coaching, with regards to training that I feel need investigating. And that's going to be completely new. Because article writing is essentially, you get an idea and you kind of put it into form, you publish it. Interviewing people is kind of getting other people's ideas. And investigative journalism, you don't quite know where you're going. You want to investigate something, you don't really know what's going to come out at the end, and I find that quite tantalizing.
Yes, and it could be also quite interesting because you uncover something really, really special, and you're obviously contributing for International Coaching News. And do you mind just sharing a little bit about what is International Coaching News about?
International Coaching News, it's an online journal, which obviously specializes in leadership and coaching. They have, if I remember correctly, it's 3 issues per year. In fact, when I was approached by them, I did some research, and they seem to be well respected within the coaching world. Each issue has a theme. So the next issue, which is coming out, is about life coaching. So they have the journal. They also have a radio show. And they have a team of writers who write articles, and they have a small team of journalists. I'm part of the team. I think there's 8 of us spread throughout the world, and we interview people. We have pretty much carte blanche. So my first interview was with the dean and director of a business school in South Africa, and the title was Leading Learning Through COVID. So it was how he managed to turn his school around during the COVID crisis and move from face-to-face training to screen-to-screen training. Yeah. My second interview, which I've just finished, was with a young CEO of a French startup, which is becoming, they have a 20 million euro turnover. It's becoming quite a significant organization. And he's a young guy who's gone into, he wants to be coached. So he's having life coaching, leadership coaching, collective coaching. So that's kind of coaching for young startup leaders. And my next interview, which is tomorrow, is going to be with a senior HR person within Airbus, which is an aircraft manufacturer who are suffering seriously from COVID. So that's more around HR leadership, kind of in the wake of COVID. So at the moment we have carte blanche to interview interesting people. So at the moment I'm in my interview phase. And then I'm going to move into my investigation phase.
That's fantastic. And a great opportunity also. I love that, again, how you apply yourself and how you pivot your skills, but then also how you acquire new ones, and how you look at things from different perspective. Because I always say, if we're not looking at things holistically, we're blind to something, and we cannot afford to be, specifically right now with everything that is going on, oblivious or blind to certain things that are happening, in order, because you will be always impartial solutions, right? And we cannot obviously come up with the best solution or transformational impact that we can if we look at everything from that point of view. So kudos, congratulations, Bob.
I think if we try to find best, we won't find it. we need to look for most appropriate, most applicable, etc. Best is a long way away.
True. Right now we need a quick wins, but we also need to look at what is the best with what we know at this time to do it, because sometimes, again, paralyzing, overwhelming, very challenging environments put us in position that we're actually then not acting at all, and we need to kind of shake that off and keep pressing forward.
Sure. I mean, COVID is very interesting. Yeah, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, there's no one alive who's had to face up to this kind of situation. Yeah, so I think, you know, a lot of people are criticizing decisions made by governments, parliaments, etc. Yeah, and I sometimes think what's missing is this the politicians themselves simply saying, yeah, we don't have all the answers. Yeah, we don't know. We're doing what we can. We're trying to do the best. Yeah, we're listening to people, etc. And no one has faced this. So I think that's on one side. And I think on the other side, you know, I try to be tolerant. Mm-hmm. When I hear decisions, they decide we need to do A, B, C. And then the next day they say, no, we're going to do X, Y, Z. You go, oh, it was A, B, C. Okay. they've spoken to people. They've talked to people. They're struggling. Yeah, they're struggling. They're struggling to do a good job.
But I also, what I'm finding that is missing, I agree 100% with what you just said, but in addition, should be allowing experts to truly help to navigate in, and why certain things need to be done in a certain way. Because if we are also not listening to experts and people that have expertise in their niches, in their area, that's exactly why it's so important. And again, to have that holistic approach, we're going to miss out and make things much more difficult, because so many things are co-dependent of each other, aren't they? So again, as you pointed out earlier, letting ego on the side, saying, I don't know how I can really leverage and utilize your skills and your knowledge and others that are very pivotal and crucial with these types of decisions. That is, as collective, we will have so much better, not only choices and decision making, but outcomes. And ultimately, we're all looking for greater, better outcomes right now, right? Aren't we?
I think what you've just said is it's how I define a leader. A leader for me, it's someone who's capable or is able to federate subject experts around a common objective and enable them to make robust decisions. That's the job of the leader. As you say, all these egos, I don't know anything about biology, germs, sociology, but my job is to enable you as a collective to make the best decisions. So that's what I think being a leader is about. Yeah, you surround yourself. Yeah, they're not beneath you. They're beside you. Yeah. And your job is to work with them, work with their expertise to enable that collection of people to come to what they consider to be the best decision. It's not to hide behind that decision, because what I'm starting to hear now in certain countries is, oh yeah, but it was the scientific council who suggested we should do this. So there's a kind of I hear politicians kind of hiding behind what the specialists decided. It wasn't the government. We locked down a particular town because the scientists told us we should do this. Yeah. So it's not about hiding behind their decisions, but it's about facilitating their decisions and say, okay,
absolutely,
working with you, we've come to this decision, and this is what we're going to do.
And we need a more transparency. I really think beside accountability, more transparency is required, because when we have that, then we have the trust. And that is the key ingredient that we were talking about for transformation. And when that is not clear, why is not clear, then we cannot really go anywhere. So I really hope that everybody who is listening and watching get a lot from this conversation, because guys, it's no shortcuts out there. There are not. And Bob is putting even today so new ways to challenge himself and sharpen his tool and skill sets that he already crafted and developed since 1986. I mean, and prior, obviously, through engineering and different programs and everything else, you guys can do the same. So Bob, it was an absolute pleasure to have you. And if you don't mind, just in a closing, what would you like to leave the audience and listeners here with as a one message from you right now during this challenges time, from your perspective, where you sit in France and heart to Europe? What would be that?
I think in brief, it would be believe in people. Believe in people's potential. Yeah, we all have I mean, we're born with just so much potential. Yeah, we could all be a Rudolf Nureyev, an Eric Clapton, a Pina Bosch. We all have this in us, and as we grow, that somehow that kind of gets suppressed. So I think believe in people's potential. Believe in people's potential to do good, and if you can help people to realize their potential. It's clear. I mean, in clearly what I see in the where I am in Europe, but there's not probably maybe time or the place, but I personally have a lot of concerns. Yeah, we're clearly seeing. I mean, my father fought in the Second World War, and my grandfather fought in the First World War. Since then, there have been no world wars, but I'm quite aware of what happened between World War I and World War II, the rhetoric, populism, etc., etc. And what I'm seeing now in a lot of European countries, maybe elsewhere, it's not dissimilar. It's really not dissimilar. Things people are saying, the rise of right-wing ideas, the rise of fashion. It's really, I find it quite concerning.
Yes, and I cannot agree more with you. I was last year in Europe for 90 days and had a chance to feel it, even though I'm originally from Europe and lived in 5 countries, shift and change that happen. And beneath of that energy, the dynamics, the politics, the people, and I can also amplify how much it is going on right now in the United States. So hopefully,
I think it's a memory thing. Yeah, I mean, I say my father fought in the war. Mm-hmm. So when I was growing up, my father was always telling me stories about. He was on the Pacific Fleet, so he was all telling me stories about battleships, and he lost friends in the war. So I was quite close. Mm-hmm. People today, I mean, young people today, they hear about it, yes, but it's kind of third hand. It's not the same. It's not the same.
They're very emotionally detached, but till they personally start experiencing stuff, then they kind of start sinking in. Because I remember when we went to Auschwitz concentration camp, I was very well aware. I believed it. I watched so many documentaries, but nothing could still prepare me till I was in the courtyard and looking the walls and magnitude of concentration camp and looking at the rooms, the gas chambers and everything else, and walking through all of that. I felt not only so real, but I had sensory overload, and I realized, it just magnified so much everything. And obviously, being in former Yugoslavia and experiencing now firsthand Balkan War, I obviously had my grandma and grandparents going through the similar thing. But I went through the war myself, and genocide and ethnic cleansing and war trauma, and then, escape and shifts and changes. I feel, again, underlying symptomatic issues are coming to the light. And I always say, if nothing, just go look at and research 10 stages of genocide, and you will see what is happening right now as a repetition of these behaviors in the last few decades, and what is coming to light. And that is rather concerning, because again, if we're having more leadership and more leading, and more leadership versus more leaders, things will be very different.
Yeah, I mean, we need to stand up and be counted.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
I think probably the first step of leadership is standing up and being counted. Yeah, I don't agree. It's difficult, yeah, because sometimes you get shot down, sometimes literally, yeah, or people criticize yourself, but it's the first step of leadership.
You're right, absolutely.
I mean, one of my favourite, I guess we're going to finish. One of my favourite quotes is Martin Luther King. Yes. He said, if you don't have something worth dying for, you have nothing worth living for. And he actually said that a couple of days before he was assassinated. And he knew full well there was an assassination attempt in the air, and he refused not to give his speech on his balcony. And he died for what he believed in. Yeah, I mean, that's maybe extreme, but in a lot of situations, yeah, you see things going on. You're not going to get shot down. You're not going to get assassinated, but you put your hand up, thinking, this shouldn't be done, and people attack you, criticize, etc. But for me, it really is the first step. Yeah.
Very, very true. And we need a more of courage. We need a more of empathy and passion and compassion to allow and create that space, and again, dialogue in order to that unfold. But right now, fortunately, because of polarization and far different points of view, as we mentioned earlier, conflict is so prevalent that we can't hear each other, or let alone come to the opportunity to agree to disagree and be civil about it. And that is the piece that I am very shocked how much is anger and how much is rage very quickly flaming up. And then obviously that is where the risks are. That is where the major problems are coming to the light. But anyway, seems like we went in many different directions, and it's beautiful with all in forefront of the leadership, Bob, today. So I really appreciate again your time and showing up and sharing so transparently your journey, as well as experiences and things you are seeing happening today. So again, thank you so much.
A real honor to have been invited. I'm really when I got the invitation, I was like, me? I thought, it's me?
Absolutely. I always look for interesting speakers with the different points of view, and obviously from different parts of the world. And I know you're very humble, but why not, Bob? You again brought up so many beautiful elements here for our listeners and viewers. And again, I really appreciate you, and looking forward to see what is coming in months and years to come.
I'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Merci.